my challenge was, how do I look to embrace AI in the agency works to help me achieve my next 3-year vision and my goals? So that was my challenge that I had to take to the agency board. So I've rocked up in this very nice place down in Shoreditch type area with my challenge, and sitting across from me is Jen Wright, who is an AI specialist. So I was like, right, well, this surely is a match made in heaven. So I presented this challenge and lots of people gave me advice. But at the end, I spoke to Jen and I said, look, Jen, could you come and do an AI audit for me and just look at what should we be doing in the business based on my vision and where I'd like to take it? So Jen did this audit. She spoke to each member of my team. They answered really openly. Where are the things we do that take time? Where are the things they believe we wasn't doing? And Jen came back with a really comprehensive structure and a plan of what we could look at, building the right foundations, the framework to really drive the agency works forward over the next 3 to 5 years. So that's what Jen brought together for me. And Jen, I'm going to tell you something I've done.
What have you done?
So I felt really proud of myself. So I got ChatGPT Business as recommended by you. So we've got that across the business now. And one of the challenges I had was the ability to analyze my team's calls, whether that was scoping calls or design sessions or training sessions across team and Zoom and things like that. So I thought, well, I'll focus on the sales team because, as we all know, everyone on this call, driving pipeline, always challenging. So I loaded into this project our playbook. We've got a playbook that's all written out with talk tracks and things like that. So I loaded that into there. I loaded in our tone of voice document, and then I wrote a prompt. I actually used AI to help me write the prompt, but I wrote the prompt that in a nutshell said, I'm a training coach working on behalf of a sales director, and I'd like you to analyze the transcript from scoping calls and in particular focus on 3 areas. Okay. And I'd like to score that transcript and that call. But if area 1 isn't done well, you can't score it higher than a 6. If area 2 isn't done well, you can't score it higher than a 6. If area 3 isn't done well, you can't score it higher than a 6. And if 2 of those areas aren't done well, you can't score it higher than a 5. So I got all this set up, really excited. I put in one of the transcripts and it ran it. Oh my God. The data that come back was unbelievable. Okay. So one of the reasons I did it as well, I had to do a 360 PDP for somebody. So I thought, well, I've got my views, but I'll put some, I'll take away my views and have it based on this is our playbook, this is our vision. So this came back with a really detailed summary of their call, the challenges, what they did well, where they needed improvement. They scored it accordingly. And I read it. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Then I stopped and thought, right, now go and look at the areas in the report it's given me. And it checked, the number it said at this point, they say this. And I went in and validated what the report was telling me. And it was unbelievable. And I just looked and thought, I would never have time to look across my team's transcripts, my team's score. Are they following the agency work tone of voice? Are they doing the things we want to be seen as a business? But now this tool's allowing me to do this, which is therefore helping the agency works keep to its values and its belief. It's helping develop the people that are doing it. I never would have done that, Jen, if I'd have had that time with you. So I really appreciate it. And that to me was just, one of the reasons I really want you to come on here and talk about the things you do with agencies. So anyway, that's my story since we met.
No, I love it. And I'm so happy to hear that you've been playing. It's exactly right. You need to get stuck in, obviously, once you've got your basics in place, as we talked about. But the fact that you've done that in a people first way, the fact that you're effectively building the business case to say, if I can see improvement in performance through that small prompt and that small bit of feedback, that's something that you could then amplify and codify into the system using AI in a more kind of strategic way. And that empowers your team, as you said. That's brilliant. Like, I love the fact that they could then potentially take that prompt and do it for themselves. They don't need to wait for a review from you. They can take that prompt, the data's there, and go, how am I performing? And how can I improve my game as I'm going along? That real-time feedback is so important, as we know, for people in all roles, but particularly within sales. It's like, how can I keep getting better?
Yeah.
That's just perfect. And I'm so happy to hear that, Jay, because that's exactly what those audits are for.
Yeah, it really, I just sat down and said, right, I'm going to do this, and what came out was amazing. And I think that I guess leads me on I think we're like in our infancy of our AI stage. We're doing some things well. We're messing around with other things to try to get it there. And when I'm speaking to the agencies, like on a week by week basis, I'm talking to, it's really obvious that they're all in different stages on this journey. Okay. Someone like me, they've just started to play, and they're really looking to just improve efficiency more than anything else. How can we do things quicker? Or in that example, how can we actually start doing things now that we wouldn't have done before? But some are already gone past that. They're now looking at AI to, how do we monetize this? How can we use it to make different products and things? So with the knowledge and the breadth of people you see, what trends are you starting to see now within agencies? Where is this really starting to go, I guess, is my question. And what should agencies be considering and thinking of?
It's a great question. And there's definite trends. So I think obviously it's been quite a tough year for all agencies. I think the wider environment is having an effect on how we do business. Not least the impact of AI, and what does that mean? So I think there's two trends that I'd really kind of bring to life a little bit more, which is, as you say, the first one, which is that operational efficiencies and people wanting to make sure that they are being as efficient as possible, because there's pressures on budget, there's pressures on costs. What they don't want to do is to put people out of jobs. But what they do need to do is to deliver more for less, as is always the challenge in case of business and tough times. So that operational efficiency, how can you do it? And you mentioned it before, but how can I do it in the right way? Which I think is how we ended up working together, because we have the same sort of values of people first. How do you make sure that you're building the problem statement around the people within your organization as well as your customers? So how can you lift people up as opposed to kind of take away parts of their jobs? And what I'm seeing is people bring in, a bit like your kind of sales efficiency and feedback model. It's small things that make a big difference to quality. So how can we accelerate learning and improvement? So a learning mindset within an agency is so important. So a learning mindset that says, I'm open to what AI is, and I'm happy to give it a go and play, to your point. But I'm also open to the fact that it might change our processes, and that's okay, as long as it means that actually it gives me more space to do a better job. And I think that's the key part, which is identify what's the improvement you want to make, so that you then sort of put AI underneath as a kind of foundation stone to lift that person up.
Yeah. So leading with the problem, and then say, what's the solution? Is it AI, or is it just automation to solve the problem you've got as a business challenge, rather than going, what can I use AI for?
And half the time it is just efficiencies. It's definitely, and I take an AI last approach, which is do everything else you can first, which is to fix the culture, fix the kind of team alignment, fix the process that's underneath that, and then you can layer AI on in a way that's going to be effective. The second thing I'm seeing is people who implement AI on their own are only sort of 30 to 40% successful. People who bring in partnerships with specialisms, and that could be not that we do it, but I know there are other organizations out there. I think is it Sparks, but they do a great load of training programs on specific use of specific tools. We take a more holistic approach and say, how can we help you build those use cases and understand the technology? But I think it's taking a systemic and strategic view of AI is the game changer. So if you can take a step back, really understand what it is you're trying to achieve, and then once you've got a load of knowledge, then go in and make big bets. So it's making sure that you don't go in and go a little bit here, a little bit there, but without any clear view as to what value that brings to you and your growth. So yeah, I think that's it. So the first trend is operational. I think that the second trend is everybody was trying everything. Like a year ago, everyone was like, oh, I'm trying this There's 10 different dictation tools, and there's 20 different versions of Copilot, and there's all these other things, and this is great, and this is great. So what I'm seeing as a second trend is this, it's almost not the bubble bursting, but a consolidation of recognition that tools are all built pretty much on the same model. So what value are you getting from that provider over and above what you're getting from ChatGPT if you go direct? So really understanding a lot more about what AI is, and particularly the LLM area, so the large language models, which is the generative AI that we've seen recently. And then saying, okay, so how does this help me to grow as a business? So how can I apply this to my product? So if you think the operational side, if the operational efficiencies is the people internally, and then you've got, how can I grow my product using AI? What is it that I could add to my product that would make my customers' lives easier? So that's the second trend that we're seeing come through now, but a little bit more confidence, I think, to start adding AI elements in. But of course, you have to do that in the right way. So you have to make sure you've got the right governance, and you've got the right data structures and access to data, and that you're being really clear with everybody and transparent about how you're using AI in that process, and that there's always a human in the loop. So there's always somebody checking what that AI is doing. You can't just put it out there.
The validation point.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got the operational efficiency. We're looking at consolidation of tools, and maybe use that to grow your product or develop things that your customers will eventually need. What's the other thing you're seeing, Jen? This monetizing thing that I'm hearing about, first party data and all of this. What's your views on this?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there are some people that will have access to a lot of really interesting data, and as long as you're following the right GDPR rules and all the rest of it, but you're engaging with your customers in a very open and transparent way to say, hey, look, we want to use your data, and we're going to use it in this way, potentially anonymized data that shows trends back and plays it back into the industry that helps to improve policy or regulation. That's a great use of monetizing data. If you're just monetizing data because you're selling it onto third parties to make a bit of money on the side, and you haven't necessarily got the right appropriate kind of respect from the clients that they're okay with that. So your customers might not have given permission for you to do that. So you have to be really careful that you don't just take that data and sell it on. Yeah. Most people won't, but obviously it's just an obvious kind of watch out. And I think it's fine if you entered into that conversation with your customer to say, hey, like, we're doing this, but then that allows us to give you this product for free. That's a fair value exchange, but you've just got to think about it from the perspective of the customer, whose data it is. So one who's monetizing data, unless it's internal data and their IP, you've got to be really careful about how you monetize it, because you don't want to break trust. Trust is so important in the AI game.
And are you seeing many agencies, businesses looking to use AI for that monetization? Do you think that's still a way off?
I'm seeing them more use it for the second use case, where it's their internal data. So they've got IP around, really deep knowledge about their subject area. And actually that deep insight is something they can apply and put out to their clients in a way that adds value. So let's say a really deep insight into what wins creative awards, for example, that kind of thing. Or you might have somebody who's selling like deeply technical work, and actually there's repeatable patterns that they might be able to then learn from and apply to customer models to speed up development time. So there's all these sorts of things that using that data is fine, but it's making sure again that you're using it in the right way.
Okay. And you mentioned a word earlier on. I thought it might come up. Bubble burst. I think in the news this week, was it Nvidia 25 billion last quarter's profit results? It's not a bad profit result, is it? But there's all this talk about the AI bubble burst, like the .com bubble burst. At the moment, a lot of these tools are relatively inexpensive or even free, but data centers, are going to be expensive. Energy to run them, frighteningly expensive. I think Google they just got a nuclear power station reopened to power their data center. You've got Nvidia 25 billion. Their costs have got to be covered somewhere, right? That it can't go on forever. So have you got any view around this bubble burst type approach? You hear this, that there's actually 20 or so, not many more companies that are really quite circular in what's happening. You know, Google are buying chips from Nvidia, and then Nvidia doing things with Google. So you've got this almost like in your Excel spreadsheet, this circular reference of stuff that's happening. This money's just moving around these 20 or so companies. You know, what happens there? Is there going to be a burst? Do you know? Have you got any view on it? Like the dot-com bubble?
First of all, I love your love of Excel, Joe. That will never go.
I love Excel.
It's just awesome. And the second is, I've always wanted to be a futurist. I'm categorically not, but I'm very happy to share my personal view. That I think there will be a kind of bubble that bursts in a sense, but it won't be the same as the dot-com bubble that bursts. You know, the tools and the way in which people are using AI, if they implement it in the right way, if they implement it in an ethical, kind of human-centered way, it will always create value for those businesses. I think where you have got a bit of circular economy, and that is going to be a very interesting thing to watch. I think there will be a bunch of money wiped off valuations. It's happening at the moment, and that probably will continue to happen for a little bit longer yet. But it will end up writing itself. It's not going to just disappear. It's not going to go away in the way that digital transformation didn't go away. But there will be consolidation, I think, of tooling. So as we talked about earlier, the people who have made AI agents off the back of what are effectively really good prompts and sold them to people as SaaS models, I think that those smaller SaaS models will disappear. It's just not sustainable because the margins are getting smaller, and so every piece of margin that you're using on tooling has to really count. And the big players have the ability to cover that cost of, as you say, the data centers and all the rest of it. And they also have the ability to monetize at aggregate level in a way that's far more effective than smaller players can. So yes, there will be a bit of a crash in terms of that value as the market realigns itself. And I think there will be that consolidation, but that's not to say it's going away anytime soon.
Okay. And a word you used there, human-centered, and you know, we've had this conversation. We're very much a people first business. You know, we try to put ourselves in our clients' shoes, etc. So agencies, you know, they're people based businesses, really. You know, that is what agencies, their key ingredient, their secret sauce is the people they have. How do they make sure that they're always putting those people first? How do they make sure they maintain that human-centered culture with bringing in these new technologies? Because we've grown our businesses around this people first, this human-centered relationship. Is the key things that you'd say, if you find yourself going down this route, just stop and think, or if you're not considering this, you absolutely should be considering this. You must have some good stories or some things around that where you've seen that go wrong or you've seen it go right. What are your thoughts around that, Jen?
So I think if you're approaching it from a purely replacement of like for like, it's definitely going to go wrong. So if you're thinking, great, I can do away with junior people and I would just create like some AI agents that do all the basics for me, and then I will keep my mid to senior creators, my mid to senior producers, my mid to senior account managers, that is not going to get you very far, very fast. So it might be a good short-term measure, but long-term growth will be stalled, if not decline, off the back of that for a number of reasons, which I think are pretty obvious. But you're going to end up with a burnt-out team. You're going to end up with people who are who don't have the support. You're going to end up with effectively an aging workforce that then isn't necessarily able to keep up with what's coming next because they're too busy, even though they're being supported by agents. But the most critical part is that you haven't got that human in the loop at every stage. So if you've got a robot giving you insight, that's great, because that's what robots are brilliant at, right? They're really good at going and finding information, synthesizing data really quickly and deriving insight, but it's not guaranteed to be correct, as you know. We all know that LLMs hallucinate, and we all know that it can take the wrong inference because they're really, really poor at context. So they've got no common sense, they've got no context, and very little creativity, quite honestly. So I think if you see that as a good guardrail to put in place as to how do you use AI in your business, the people that I'm seeing doing it really well are being really considered about where can this add value to my team. So if the question in your mind is not, how do I use AI? The question should be, how can I lift my team to do their best possible job?
I love that.
What data would help them to be more creative? And that data needs to be validated potentially by a junior. And actually, I think if you implement this well, you should absolutely be keeping all levels of people in your agency. And those juniors start to become actually able to be across a broader range of things because they have more time, because they're not doing the basic number crunching.
Yeah.
So it gives them an opportunity to play in things a lot more quickly, so they're not so bored, so they don't then leave. So actually you've got better employee satisfaction. So what time, if you could give them back time, and this is a question I asked your team, wasn't it? If I could give you back time, what would you do with that time? Is absolutely the right question to ask of your team.
Yeah.
And then say, okay, why is that important? And what can I take away from you that would allow you to do your best work?
I love it, Jen. Lifting the team. And what would you do with that time? That's fantastic. Jen, can you believe it's 5 to 10?
No, I can't.
I couldn't. I just looked up like, oh my God, I've got a load of questions in my head. I want to ask, but we're 5 to 10. Right. Jen, thank you so much for doing this today. I hope you've enjoyed it, because I know I have.
I love talking to you anytime, Joe. Thank you.
A-game. We always ask our guests before they leave to give us one key takeaway. Now, sometimes that goes into 2 or 3. Listen, what are the key takeaways you would give the people listening to this today? What would they be?
So look, don't be afraid of it. Really, really get stuck into how do you want to use AI within your business? What is it going to help you to achieve? So before you start, secure your data. Make sure the data is data that you can use. And make sure that you're securing your tooling. So don't let people use personal accounts. Bring that all back in and have business accounts so that you can help to manage that and manage your client, protect your client's data really securely. Make sure there's a really clear outcome and that you have an ability to measure the difference. So if you want to give people back time, great, get them to do timesheets so you can measure how much time they get back, because that allows you to reinvest in that case. And like you, Jay, just go play and play with prompts and try things and put it out there and see what the feedback is from your employees and from your clients, and be really transparent about what you're doing, because people will be happy to be engaged and would love to help shape it. And one thing that I would say is if you could do things differently, how would you accelerate your customer satisfaction, your employee happiness and growth? Because your current processes might not be quite right. So don't just digitize your current processes, rethink your business.
Yeah, build it from the ground up.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and one small thing, because I do want to help people where I can. I get asked a lot of the same questions. So at some point, and you'll have to keep me honest here, Jay, so I'm creating a website called j3n.ai, so jen.ai. And it's going to be a totally free repository of useful little bits and pieces. So articles that might help leaders, podcasts, access to free training courses. The principle being it's all free and it's all useful, all centered around how do leaders use AI in their businesses. So watch this space.
What, like a Netflix for AI?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Jen.